everybody. We're back with our second episode. Uh, I'm Rohan Fernandez. I'm in Copenhagen. We have Pawan Kapoor who's sitting in Toronto, Canada, and we have Arjun Veer who's in Chandigarh, in India. So we're across three different time zones. So it's been, it's been a bit hard to try and get together and record these episodes, but we're having fun while doing it, and we finally here. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the very complex relationship between gamers and gaming companies, which, to put it simply, is an interplay of love and hate. And gamers, as we all know, are quite a passionate lot. They invest their time, money, emotions into the gaming experiences, and they form very strong attachments to certain titles, franchises, and sometimes even to certain developers and studios. On the other hand, while gaming companies do want to offer the best services they can, some of their monetization practices can come off as being too exploitative by the gamers, by the consumers itself. So that's what we want to talk about today. Now, there's a lot of different behaviors they have that consumers might frown upon. One of them is remasters. We've seen a lot of remasters come up over the past few years, a lot more than what we would have seen before. Now, there might be many reasons for it. There might be many groups of gamers who actually like it. Some may not like it, but let's start talking about that.
Yeah, we've got like 3 or 4 of these narrowed down to talk about in our conversation today, but remasters is a good place to start for sure. I think a couple of years ago, like 7, 8 years ago, when we started getting the first remasters, there was a lot of excitement about it because, and this was mostly a Sony thing at that time, and like it continues to be mostly a PlayStation thing, but it was a novel thing, right? We had the new remasters, we had the new Uncharted game, and the Last of Us, the first Last of Us game, and people were really happy to play this new version of a really classic, a really lovely old game, right? So there was nostalgia, there was demand, all of these things. So that was great. Now I feel like we wait for a studio coming out with a big announcement, and we're all excited about it, and then it turns out that they're just doing a remaster of a game that we've all played. Well, not all of us, but yeah, a remaster of a game that's already exists. So I feel like there's something there that does like that takes people the wrong way, and I'm kind of looking to explore that with you guys. So first thoughts, Arjun, what do you think about the whole remaster trend?
Um, I think as you mentioned, that it started off well. The whole idea and concept, even going back even further, we had those trilogies that used to come out of all the PS2 games on PS3. Till the
Yeah.
time the consoles did not have backward compatibility, I felt that remasters were relevant. But for Naughty Dog to release a remaster for Uncharted 4, Lost Legacy, then Last of Us 2, I think it's just there comes a certain point when you expect a company to announce a new game and then they do that, and it's just disappointing. And then you realize they're still farther away from actually announcing a new game. So I understand why the companies do it. They do it for the sole fact that it helps churn in more money, keeps the shareholders happy, and all of that. But at the same time, you have to understand that you cannot just remaster a game that just came out and was actually very polished and everything was accurate about it, and you can still play it on the same console by
Right.
purchasing for $20. So I think that's where the problem started. And yeah, but we have limited examples of it, right? I think GTA also did it, and Skyrim at one point was doing it. It was releasing on almost everywhere it could, and there were a lot of memes around it as well. So I think, yeah, some companies that when they do it, especially the bigger companies from which you expect a game announcement, we expected a Elder Scroll announcement. It happened, but it's still 5 years down the line. And then GTA as well. So all of these games, that's where I feel it just makes you feel bad as a consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the Last of Us, I know you're especially ticked off about the Last of Us, Arjun, but I'm thinking maybe they wanted to time it with the HBO release as well.
Yeah, they did the first Last of Us remake with the HBO, with the HBO show, and it made sense. Then they went on to release Last of Us 2 remastered. That did not make any sense to me. That's where
Which was already a super polished game, and like
everything was right about
I mean,
it.
Yeah, and they still improved it, but they made like incremental improvements. It's
Yeah,
it's like sometimes like how a phone releases of a certain company that's just incrementally better,
yeah.
and like they've just released it again. Uh, so yeah, so
But
that
who
was
are
that was
buying these
strange.
games? Is it people who haven't played the game before? Are they trying to get it to a new generation that's not played the game
Yeah,
before, or
I think
fanboys buying it again?
fanboys will buy it again, obviously. But apart from that, I think it is those people who watch the show on HBO and then they stroll around the mall and see, oh, Last of Us game. Oh, I've seen this show. Chalo, I'll
I
just
know
buy
this.
this. I'll buy this for $60, even though I can buy it for $10 as well, even if I was smart enough. But I won't do
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is the audience it caters to.
See,
yeah, yeah.
I'm maybe one of those audiences because I'm like, ooh, if this game has marginally better graphics, it has like all these new tech things that my PS5 can play, maybe I'll just play that instead of the first one. And so I think this is a good segue into talking about why remasters exist and why companies are going on making them. And one thing, like while we were doing the research for this, we noticed was that this is mostly a PlayStation thing, right? It's mostly PlayStation Studios and exclusive games which are being made into remasters. There's the Halo collection, the Halo Master Chief collection on the Xbox, but there's that's it, and there's a few other notable games at most, but mostly this whole thing is a Sony thing, right? So Sony makes these amazing exclusives, and now they've doubled down on these remasters, and they're seem to be milking it. But what are the reasons why remasters are going on and getting made? And I want to think about this from the developer's point of view as well as from like gamers who are new in the market. So what do you guys think?
I think it's in a way it's also acceptable that companies want to make remasters. It's reaching out to people who haven't played the game before. In many cases, in a way, I also think it's okay for them to be able to make some quick money. And also, example, some of the improvements made in the Spider-Man games and some of the other remasters is ray tracing, which wasn't available before, right? And there is a demographic that really appreciates those kind of improvements rather than adding newer story elements like they did with Persona 5 Royale. It had a lot
Mm,
of additional story elements, and like they do with a lot of the Switch games remakes as well. But some people just appreciate ray tracing. It's new technology. It's a brilliant game. So what if I have ray tracing added on to this game as another layer?
hmm
What if the water is a bit more fluid and a bit shinier, right?
Yeah.
So they do enjoy. So I don't think it's all that bad that companies would spin out these remasters. But of course, at some point, it's also going to impact new games coming out, right? So if Naughty Dog is going to spend some of the resources on remastering games, then we could say that we are missing out on new experiences. So it's that balance, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I personally feel with mm, certain games, again, I know I've talked about Last of Us a lot and my hate towards it being a remaster, but these all add on features, these story elements, and all of this, they add it so that they can actually have a conversation about it, right? When games used to come out from PS2 to PS3 as remasters, you could talk about it being HD, you could talk about 1080p resolution, 60 FPS,
Yeah.
30 FPS, whatever. But now there barely is any difference between a PS4 Pro and PS5, right? PS4 Pro was able to do the 4K thing. Ray tracing, I think, was, I'm not sure if it was available, but 60
Faster
FPS,
loading time.
yeah, fast loading time. I mean, that is one thing. That is the way PS5 also got sold off. But coming to other companies, I think Xbox can't do it because they don't have any games apart from Halo 2 remaster actually. Uh, and with
Mm,
Nintendo, what I like about Nintendo in this regard is that they only remaster or re-release those games that they know people haven't played. So you had the first Zelda, you had the Mario, you had the Mario Kart as well. These all games came out on Wii U, and they got wasted there because nobody bought them. So they re-released them on Switch. They never remastered Mario Galaxy because they know everyone played it on the Wii itself. So I think that is
yeah.
another approach to actually reach the audience that did not reach and they missed out on a console. So what I would like to see a remaster maybe would be of Uncharted Golden Abyss and all the games that came out on PS Vita and people could
Mm,
not play it. So something like that maybe. That
that port would be fun.
yeah.
That port would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah. I think that like both of you guys are saying, right? it's the first of all, it's the nostalgia effect that the companies are tapping into, right? And like for us, we've been gaming for a while. We've seen when these games released for the first time, but of course, there's new people who just entered the market who are just playing these games for the first time. So for them, I think it's really cool that they get to play these games in the newest platform and all upgraded and all of that. And it is with backward compatibility. Arjun, you were saying, I agree, like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You can play that PS4 game on your PS5 already, so maybe it doesn't need a remaster.
Yeah.
The negative part about that is, okay, the companies are making remasters, don't price it almost at full price.
Exactly.
Right? Why are you paying for a 60 fps Red Dead Redemption remake from the PS3? Why are you paying full price? That to me feels like
Yeah.
something of concern. And also I feel like there's a perceived lack of effort when us as we as gamers look at remasters coming out and we're like, oh, they didn't have anything creative, and so they're just milking an old cow.
Yeah.
So I think that plays against this whole trend. I don't know how much organizations and studios are taking this feedback, or if there is even statistic to data to take this feedback, because obviously there's demand. People are buying these games. That's why companies are investing in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one aspect of this whole remaster thing, which is a risk for developers themselves, is if they make a remaster and the remaster has bugs in it,
Yeah.
right? That is a short way of like throwing an axe on your foot or something, whatever that idiom is. For example, the Super Mario 3D All Stars collection, it had mixed reception, right? Because fans were happy to have the classic Mario games on the Nintendo Switch, but the remasters enhanced things only very slightly, and it was a limited time availability, which wasn't making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
So the same
yeah, I
with
think
the GTA trilogy, right? They put
Yeah.
together first GT games, and then the characters looked worse, and they
yeah,
also removed it from the store,
Yeah.
as in you couldn't
right,
buy the games individually. So they kind of decided what the gamers get to play. They forced the
hmm
gamers into just getting the trilogy if they wanted to play the original games. So
yeah. Yeah,
that seemed
GTA
a bit
San Andreas, yeah, that was like a blunder. They basically ported the Android game of GTA San Andreas onto consoles and PC, and
I didn't know
people
that.
found out there's actually some details that give this away, and so it was a whole big thing that they've just ported the handheld device game onto consoles and PC. So that was really weird.
I didn't know that.
But
How come that didn't blow up?
it
It
did
did.
blow up,
I think
like, and then
the
they
original GTA titles that came out, by original I mean the first release on consoles. After that, they did a
yeah.
remake as well. I think that's what Rohan is also talking about. The whole remake that
Mm,
did of
Yeah,
this trilogy, that also was a blunder, because I think they gave
right.
it to the Rockstar did not make it. They hired someone to make those remakes of all the GTAs, and they were filled with bugs. The soundtrack was removed, everything was removed. So, and just before releasing those remakes, they removed the other GTA titles that were already available, the ones that you're mentioning about, the ported ones, which were
Yeah.
actually performing better, which were in some way better than the remakes. So that was a blunder. I
Mm,
think that's where the money milking starts coming in.
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
I think with the remasters, there's also another drive that we just talked about, remakes as well. What is our opinion on remakes as to games being developed from scratch again, but it's the same story, same characters, and all of that?
Like the new Resident Evil game, or like what
All
game are
the
you
Resident
thinking
Evils that
about?
are getting remakes, the Final Fantasies are getting remake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
the distinction is very, very small there between remakes and remasters. To me, it's like it's kind of the same thing. I'm playing the same map, I'm playing the same character. They're a bit more fluid. So like to me, it's okay. Graphic enhancements,
Yeah.
slight gameplay improvements, and all of that. I don't know if that's a new selling point for these organizations and for these studios. I'm pretty ambivalent to
Okay.
this distinction.
Interesting.
I think it really depends on the game. There's been a few remasters which were quite good. Uh, Example, Final Fantasy VII itself. They added a lot more detail to it. I mean, little things
Mm,
which I think it matters to a certain gamers, right? Like background NPC conversations, interacting with NPCs, and then just more detail in the little notes you find in different parts of the game. Gives more background to the
Yeah.
lore. Persona 5 Royale added a lot more elements to the part when you're in school, right? The life where you're not in the fantasy. I forgot what it's called now in
Yeah.
Persona 5. So some games have done a lot of effort to improve the experience of the gamer, to make it more immersive, giving more detail to everything in the
Yeah.
game. So and
Yeah.
some and some, it's like a saying, Bound is just pretty much a remaster.
Yeah.
I think remakes work well with the games that do not necessarily age well. So, for example, I
Mm,
can't play the original Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 now because at that time it was a game, the camera was panned on top. Once you move from
yeah.
one room to another, there was a
God, that
loading.
was
Yeah, so to
right.
shoot, you go like this, very robotic movements.
Yes.
So when those games turn into proper third-person action shooters, you can actually enjoy them. So those remakes are very good.
Mm,
They still shouldn't get nominated for Game of the Year awards, but and also with Final Fantasy
and when,
and
yeah.
win as well. And also with Final Fantasy, it was a turn-based game, a turn-based combat game. So for it to turn into a proper action adventure game, I think that's also makes it possible for a person like me who hasn't played Final Fantasy to enter the franchise from the best entry as
Yeah.
well. So those kinds of remakes where the games do not necessarily age well and you can't go back to play them, I think that's where
Yeah.
remakes are good. And are we moving to the next topic? If we are, I have one question before.
Yeah.
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 We're not yet. Like, let's have the question, and then I also have a question that we can.
Perfect. My question is kind of like a closure, but it's okay. So I just want to know if there was one game that you guys had in mind that you would want a remake or remaster of.
Yeah. That's a great question. I actually had something similar in mind also.
Okay.
And I am actually really excited about the Metal Gear series being like remade or
Oh,
like
nice. Yeah.
remasters. It's already in the works. I played Snake Eater back when it released, and like I don't know, I was a bit of an amateur at that time, and so I didn't stick with it. I found it a bit difficult. It was only MGS4
Yeah.
that I really got into the game, and I was like, wow, this is extremely immersive. This is like a movie that I'm playing.
Yeah.
And so to be able to play the new Metal Gear Solid remakes or remasters that they're doing, and I've seen the trailer, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
That game I'm actually excited about. But again, that's to your point, Arjun. Like they're remaking and they're adding elements to a game
Yeah.
that was really old. I think they'll still keep the camera angles and stuff, but that is one game that I'm definitely excited about.
Nice.
I would want GoldenEye to be remade.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
I had a lot of fun playing co-op. It's one of the, I think, earliest, at least one of the first co-op games that I played. And I just remember so many bits and pieces in the game, which was so much fun. My brother and I were playing that quite a lot, and
Mm.
remaking that with all the tech we have today, I think
Yeah.
it'll turn out to be a brilliant game.
That's nice.
Nice. Arjun, you?
I think for me also it's Metal Gear Solid 4. There are two reasons for it.
Mm.
One is that is the only game that is stuck in PS3. Now it did not release on Xbox, so you can't do backward compatibility via Xbox One or Series X. It did not release on PS Vita or any remasters or anything. You have all the other Metal Gears that you can play again on your Vita, PS4 and stuff. But Metal Gear Solid 4 is stuck on PS3. You can't play it anywhere else. I don't know why it's not being released. So whenever I want to play that game, I have to turn on my PS3. I have to play that game. I have to see Snake smoking the cigarette while the game gets installed and all of that.
Yeah.
So
Kept you waiting there.
so yeah, I think Metal Gear Solid 4 is one game that actually needs a remake, remaster very quickly.
Yeah, man, those Metal Gear games for sure.
Yeah.
I would love to play them. Yeah, okay. Rohan, take us to the next thing. What are we talking about next?
So remasters is the one way the companies do it, and the other is, I think, the annual franchises, which is primarily sports games, which has an annual release. The last FIFA I played was FIFA 06. I've never played football in real. I played a lot of futsal, so I haven't played football in my life ever. But I enjoyed playing the FIFA games, and FIFA 06 also had an excellent soundtrack. I think I started playing the game more because of the soundtrack. After that, I stopped playing, and I heard friends saying it's the same game being repeated over and over again. And this started back in 06, 07, 08. The good thing is the community did fight back, and we don't have FIFA games anymore. Review sites fought back by copy pasting. I think it was Metacritic and IGN, right? IGN kind of fought back and copy pasted the review from
Yeah.
the previous year
For the Nintendo Switch version, yeah.
for the Nintendo Switch version.
Yeah.
Yes. And we have the WWE games as well.
Yeah.
And they also made changes in the recent past. And I think Arjun and me are both
Yeah.
guilty of buying WWE games. And I stopped buying. I think the last game I bought was WWE 18. I stopped
Okay.
after that.
Mm.
But that's also because my friends and my brother, we all stopped playing it for different
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
There's no reason to get it. I was super tempted to get it now, the 23 one, but I still didn't get it. But that's another thing that companies do, right? They know that people want the latest version of the game,
Yeah.
though it might
Yeah.
just add a few new characters, get the players a bit more sweaty,
Hmm.
have a campaign mode in a sports game that doesn't really make much sense. And then you'd think that other sports games like tennis games would be better because they're not annual releases. They come like once every 3-4 years. In fact, the lack of tennis games. But even the tennis games don't get it right, even after multiple versions. But yeah, I mean, before we get into the other genres of like COD and Battlefield, sports games wise, what do you think, Arjun? Is was the community unfair to EA in fighting back about annual releases with no big difference?
I think the community was speaking against it, but at the same time, they were buying it. FIFA and Call of Duty
Yeah.
were the top selling games all the time. And I think at some, you also, what I feel is that during the 2005, 15 to 15 era, if a company has made a certain engine out for a game, they would use it for 2, 3 games. Now for AAA titles, every time a new engine gets built and everything. But you can't do that for sports game, and so there's not much possibilities of them to upgrade every year. And if they miss out on releasing for a particular year, the other franchise will release it, other company will release it,
Yeah.
and then you lose out on competition because people will say, "Oh, this is the latest FIFA game that came out." So they struggle with
Yeah.
that aspect as well. But at the same time, I feel sometimes they get lazy around it. I think during the 2010 to 13, NBA was doing very good with their annual releases. Every time they were getting
Yeah.
9, 10s and everything. While WWE was just adding a hot tag. They added hot tag for 1 year. The next year they added some filter. I don't know. There was some minor upgrades every time, but we people
Very
used
minor.
very
Yeah.
minor upgrades. So I think that's where, if companies don't get lazy around it and they respect the fact that people are coming back and buying their games every year, that, so I think there won't be any community backlash then. But sometimes do companies get lazy? Yeah. And personally, I've also stopped buying annual franchises now. For WWE also, I buy
Yeah.
always the second game. I skip one and then I buy another. So that's how I
Mm.
go with games now. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Uh, to be as well, like similarly, the fact that these games are consistently released every year, like the FIFA games, the other NBA games, NFL, all of these games, it kind of it maintains a regularity. It maintains an expectation, and they have to improve some minor things. So the user will always know, okay, something will hopefully be marginally better. So that's a pull. So that's a good thing about these games that the gamers, I think, feel. And then a lot of these games are competitive, and
Yeah.
so there's the strong competitive scenes, and they have large communities, and so
Yeah.
these new games promote interactions among the community, right? What's new? There's something to talk about. There's something new, so like it keeps that buzz alive. It keeps that interest alive, and then people come up with more things, and they appreciate one thing, or they even no publicity is bad publicity. So even if there's a backlash, the game is still being talked about. um right, so that's, I think, kind of the good things about it. What is not so great is that, like I said, with the remasters, when these annual franchises release with technical issues, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
That's not what you expect. Like the WWE games, like the NBA games, like you mentioned, the NBA games just tanked so
Yeah.
hard after consistently getting 8s and 9s. They were at 6, 5.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, and of course these are IGN ratings, so what can you say? But at the same time, they did drop significantly in the player loyalty and the player sentiment. And also, one thing that is not super prevalent now, but was at a point of time, was the cost and the microtransactions.
Yeah.
These annual sports games would come out, and they would introduce some annoying loot boxes that were hidden behind microtransactions and paywalls. So that was a that like got a huge backlash, I believe, and like that was something that even regulation was brought in, and it was considered gambling at some point. So that was a whole other thing in itself. But yeah, like the community frustration and the limited innovation in what a studio is developing and releasing are some of the things that work against this annual franchisee release.
Um, I think I would like to, when we talk about annual franchises, Call of Duty gets a lot of slack, but I would like to defend them for one thing. I think they do their job pretty well of releasing a game every year, and it's not
Yeah.
like I compare it with the other sports game and you say this is an FPS, it doesn't need that. When you look at other games, Overwatch 2 came out, it had no reason to come out. Overwatch 2 or basically Overwatch 1 only.
It was just Overwatch 1.
It was ditto
Yeah.
Overwatch 1, and I think that would be the similar case if Rainbow Six decided to release a sequel as well, but so glad they're not doing that. So for Call of Duty to come out every year and still feel fresh to some extent, release a new campaign, have some minor changes, that the gameplay also feels different, and people have preferences. Oh, this year's Call of Duty is better than the last year. So I think the work is done well in that, and that is the only franchise, non-sports franchise, alive to do an annual release now, I think. So it's a big appreciation to them for that regard. I think they failed last year, but yeah.
It's a it's a mixed bag there with Call of Duty also, I believe, because like one thing that they do really smart is that they have different studios developing the games. So one studio is actually developing a game in 2 years, right? So now it's Treyarch, next time it's Sledgehammer, whatever. So I think that's really smart. But at the same time, they're just full price DLCs again, Arjun. To me, at least, okay, they're still smooth. If you have a smooth game already, unless you mess something up, it's going to remain a smooth game. So I don't find myself giving them that much credit for coming out with a bug-free game. But at the same time, there is an excitement about, okay, what are they going to do in the next zombie mode? What are they going to come out with in the multiplayer, like which most people just hope to keep consistent and just remove cheaters and hackers. But like, Ron, what do you think? I know you should get
I
a
just
word
thought
in.
when Warzone came out, right? When was it? 2021?
Pandemic, 2020.
Yeah, the pandemic. So I actually thought like they were kind of spoiling for themselves because when Warzone came out, I thought the player count for the multiplayer will drop, and I thought that will lead into them not having an annual release. But nothing changed over there, right? They're still doing well, and I mean, I think they also managed to get newer players who had never played the Call of Duty games before. I think they got them to play Warzone. So I mean, brilliant ideas all the way through.
Yeah, they every year with their new games, they're adding a new player base. It's insane how successful this business model is of theirs. So it's kind of hard to say mean things about it, but that's just my opinion.
But then,
one.
Like, I was going to jump into Battlefield because we kind of we kind of like
actually,
Battlefield, don't we?
yes. But like I had one last thing that I wanted to mention about yearly releases and all that is the crunch culture, right? So let's say now there is an expectation on these studios to release an annual game on the sports games, on Call of Duty, on all of these things. That is a very tight deadline, right? In my MBA, I actually did a case study on Rockstar Games and on Treyarch and basically Tencent. And it's like super prevalent, right? They've announced these games, there's an expectation, and that leads to a very high level of pressure within these studios that there's even a term for it. It's called the death crunch, in which like towards the release of the game, time has gone by, your release has already been announced and the game's not ready. You don't want to release a buggy game, and so this adds to the working culture in the game studios deteriorating a little bit. So that was just like one final thing that I wanted to sort of put out there about one of the negative things about these annual releases.
Yeah, but that's, I think that expands across all the companies, right? Rockstar complained a lot, and Rockstar hasn't released anything for 6 years.
Rockstar takes like decades to release a game,
and
but
still they
still
have
like
problem with their
they're worst known for their crunch culture.
So I think that
it's there for everything, but I think like this also adds to it. I think like it just like it sprinkles more
makes sense
gasoline on that fire.
Definitely, I think there's a slight difference between those two because with example CD Project Red, right? When they release a bad game, they have time to fix it. But with
Yeah,
annual franchises, you don't have time to fix it.
yeah,
So you have to get it right
Mm,
because you have like 10 months to go before the next
true,
game's
true.
out. So,
yeah,
But I think
you know,
Rockstar can never release an buggy game. They cannot afford to do that. So I think for them also that
yeah,
pressure is there always. I But yeah, I get what you're
yeah,
saying about the annual franchise. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
even
This
GTA
is
5, right, they launched it and they had a lot of issues with the multiplayer. So they had time to
Multiplayer,
fix
yeah,
it
yeah,
basically.
yeah. Multiplayer they released afterwards, right? The campaign and every single player part was perfect. They released the
Yeah,
multiplayer
but
1 month
but they were
later.
supposed to
Yeah, yeah.
but they were supposed to release multiplayer day one, right?
No, no, they always plan it that
No?
way only. They
Okay.
announce it that way only. So they give time
Okay.
for people to play the single player and then
So
hop into
finish
the
the
multiplayer.
game.
yeah, which was a good move. But this is maybe a good segue into talking about like the next piece here, which is games releasing with bugs. And Rohan, you mentioned Battlefield, which was like a total case study in this, in which like the game released Battlefield 2042. There's a huge following of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, and there's so much nostalgia. I absolutely love the Battlefield franchise, and they don't release games often. They release games once every like 3 years, 4 years, whatever. And then 2042 came out, and it was so buggy. There was so much wrong with it. It was so unfinished. Like I mean, it was the graphics and everything was great, but the game, like they didn't have classes in it. The maps were too huge. You just like it. It was a walking simulator, and that really cost the company a lot. Uh, what do you think about games like Battlefield and other games like the Cyberpunk, which releases with a whole bunch of bugs? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. With Battlefield, I think there's a slight difference between having bugs and having large maps or no classes, right?
Mm,
Even I mean, we've been playing Battlefield for a while now. So even with Battlefield 3 and 4, we saw the community kind of changing how they wanted the games to be. There wasn't much interest for larger maps, right? And again, the game wouldn't really work if you had 10 choppers near at the same time, or like many tanks and many vehicles on the ground, right? So I think there's a slight difference between games having bugs and games not having listened to what the players wanted from previous releases itself. So that's just, I think, them getting that bit wrong as to what the gamers really want. And then, of
mm,
course, the games like Cyberpunk, which released unfinished, and there could be different reasons, right? Pressure from the investors, pressure from the gamers itself, because the game was kind of overhyped. There's a lot of expectations, unrealistic expectations, you could say. So games have been, I mean, developers have been releasing games like this, but then there's also the stage where they go back and take feedback from the community and
yeah,
fix these games, which I think Battlefield is a great example of that, right?
yeah,
They took the time, but comparing what the game is today to when it released, massive difference.
huge
And
difference. Like,
you know,
yeah,
you,
sorry, go
you've
ahead.
been playing it quite a bit
It's
recently, right?
it's
Pawan?
it's pretty much all I play. Like I turn my console on, I have an hour to play. Like I'm on Battlefield. I'm like in the chopper or I'm in the jets, and I'm like the game is so polished and so perfect right now. The map design is perfect. They've added the season 7 lately. Like they're stopping at season 7. There's no more seasons in it, but it's been amazing. Like it is so polished. I have nothing to complain about in this game. Not even the player count. Like there was one period in which like rooms were filled with AI and bots and all, but every time I join a game, whenever I do, like if I join it at 4 p.m., I've gotten off of work a bit early. There's people playing. I don't have to wait in a lobby. The game is smooth. There's no bugs. The guns are balanced and still different. It's such a good game. I really wish that the player count would be more and more people would play it, and like my friends would play it, and we'd make a squad and do all of those things. But just the way the game released, right? Huge anticipation, huge disappointment, and a lot of people are afraid now to come back to it or to give it a second chance. Um, and I think for Battlefield, the next Battlefield that they release, 2025, 2026, is going to be, one of their last shots in
Yeah,
creating a game which just takes off from the start or it tanks. People are not going to give, like, the gaming community or the gaming audience is not very forgiving, I believe, in terms of giving second chances, right? Cyberpunk again is another example here in which they've really polished the game now. They've gotten rid of the bugs, and they started from a place where they had to give refunds for people who had pre-ordered. The game was so bad that they had to refund like a whole bunch of players. I can't imagine what that company was going through at that time and how difficult it was. But they released a buggy game, so you have to do the refunds. But now it's polished and it's almost entirely bug free, and still people are apprehensive. People, in our gaming community, we have obviously these nice engaged communities on Facebook in which we have thousands of people, and people still ask, is Cyberpunk now a good game to play? Is it bug free? So people aren't in touch with the whole thing as much as we are, and so for these people the first impression really is the one that matters the most.
Yeah, I think with Cyberpunk, one of the things that went wrong was they earlier planned it only for the new gen consoles, right? PC and the new gen, and then as an afterthought, they wanted to also build it for the older gen consoles. So then they had to like downgrade. Do you think, Arjun, is it fair for these games to have their own award category, and is it fair for them to be pit against other games that release like newly?
Two train of thoughts in this. One is it gives a second chance to companies that actually genuinely tried hard but did not do well. I think No Man's Sky is an example, even though they lied a lot and all of that, but they had a very disaster in terms of sales. Also, they did not do well when the reviews came in. So it was a small company at the end of the day. So for them to have a second chance at it and get another attempt at gaining people's trust and also getting money out of it, I think that is where it works well. But for a company like CD Projekt Red, they announced it in 2015 or 16. So I'm not
Yeah, they
sure
had a
if
lot of
it was
time.
entirely for the next
Yeah.
generation. I think, and for the next generation also, I started the game on PS4. I started the game on PS4. No, I started on PS5 only, and I left it initially when it was launched because there were so many bugs. Then when I was told by the community that now it's bug free and all, I came back to play it, and it was still very bad. The game overall was very bad as well. It was a half-assed RPG game. I did not feel that, but they did it well with the DLC that came out. I think Phantom Liberty is the name of the DLC, and that's where the original Cyberpunk, people are saying that's what they aimed for and all of that. But that's just unfair, right? I've paid all of my money for it. I've tried giving you 2 years as well, and still the experience is not there. And now I have to pay more to get the DLC and then see what the whole ambition was about. So that's where I think problem is. And Battlefield also, I think Battlefield has been screwing it up for the longest time. I feel it started off with Battlefield 4. Battlefield 3 was the last good polished game that came out in 2011, was it? Yeah. And then Battlefield 4, then Battlefield Hardline to chalo, let's not talk about Hardline. And then we had Battlefield 1. That one was, I think, fairly okay.
One was so good.
Yeah, one
It
was
was such
good.
a good game.
Yeah.
They should have
And then
marketed it
5, I
more.
think, got ruined again.
Yeah.
And then this game, disaster. So, and they stripped off everything. There's no campaign, there's no co-op. People are not talking about all that also. Okay? They've stripped off every other attempt that they tried. They had some sort of campaign. That is just against AI, right? Bots, right? There's no campaign.
I mean,
it's a tutorial. Right?
It's a tutorial.
Not really. Yeah, it's a tutorial.
Yeah.
I'm going to ignore the part where you dissed Hardline. I spent a lot of time in it, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Well, I just feel that was an irrelevant entry. It was good, it was fun, but that was very irrelevant.
That's only because you think it's a Battlefield game that came out as a non-Battlefield game. As a different game in itself, it was so good. It was like Rohit is saying, it was flawless. Rohan, I know you played a bunch of
It
Hardline.
should have been just called Cops and Robbers or something, not Battlefield. Yeah.
It was made by the different developers as well. I think Medal of Honor guys made it, right? If I'm not wrong. Or was it DICE only? Okay. But yeah, anyways.
Well, so, if it was somebody else, they should be making all the future Battlefield games. That's perfect.
But yeah, with Battlefield, they've been getting a lot of chances and they're screwing it up. So that's where I feel it's unacceptable. I bought 2042 day one and I bought Call of Duty as well during that time. And I could not play Battlefield 2042. I was not allowed to enter the lobbies because there weren't enough players. Whenever I was in, I celebrated a kill and then I saw AI was written. So I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? Am I playing with bots? That's just... So I shifted to Call of Duty again. Now when you say it's perfect, I wouldn't want to come back, right? I spent 4,000 rupees when I actually wanted to play it. So that's where I feel it's unacceptable if a company is repeatedly doing it because they know what the fault and the problem was.
Yeah, they just doubled down on like large maps and like just larger, and they just kept going in that, and then it didn't.
But how did it launch? I'm just curious. 2042 released with one game mode, 4 maps, right?
Yeah, four maps or so, and like the maps were so huge that nobody was. And there was initial excitement, but
4 maps, one game mode. and bots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the biggest turn off for me when I got to know that bots were in the game. Then I
And
was
also all the destructibility and all of that was minimized as well compared to Battlefield 3 and
Reduced.
4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Battlefield 3 had a campaign. It had 6 co-op missions. It had 10 maps. It had 7 8 game modes. And we are 11 years later and we see this. So that's where the problem is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they
but they
haven't quite
fixed it as
figured
well.
out the
Huh?
They fixed
formula.
it.
It's not enough for us that they fixed it now.
Too late.
Uh,
You're not giving the bare minimum as well, so that's not fine.
The thing is, it is bringing back gamers, right? I mean, the player count has increased. But thing
oh
is,
yeah.
it had its window. Like,
Yeah.
I bought the game day one, tried it for a while, was disappointed. I moved on to other games now. So it's going to take a lot for me to come back to that game. So a lot of these games, they missed their little window, and because I'm sure there were other games that are not releasing during the COD Battlefield season, right? To give the big franchises
Yeah.
their space.
Mm.
So then when you miss that window, then it's hard to come back. And games like Battlefield, I mean, you enjoy it with your friends, your squad. So again, getting everybody back,
Yeah.
your squad and play is a bit hard.
But
Yep.
So
yeah. And also, one more complaint I had on Battlefield before we move on is the fact that even if you're releasing one game mode, I think you should be able to do it well as well. Well, we see the example of Rainbow Six. When it launched, it had only one game mode. It had nothing to offer for people who don't want to do like one chance, one per round kind of gameplay. And still, it did well and build a community, right? So if you're able to, if you
Yeah.
want to recycle all the content and just flesh out all the main stuff and still want to focus on one thing, you have to do it well. That's what they failed at.
Yeah.
yeah,
Fair enough.
I've been playing it for the last couple of weeks now, just no weekends. I am enjoying it, but again, it's not like the way it used to be, where I used to really look forward to just logging on to Battlefield and spending 2 3 hours in one shot. All right.
Yeah.
I think
But
I'm sold now. You two guys have convinced me. I'll try it again tonight. Let's see.
yeah, should
Yeah.
give it a
Let's
shot.
play together. It
Sure.
is such a nice game. Y'all can be my chopper gunners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so overall, what do you think, Pawan? I mean, is our gaming companies learning lessons? Are we going the right direction? Are we spiraling into something that's going to collapse the entire industry because all the gamers are going to move towards I don't know, other modes of gaming, mobile gaming, and or just being
Mm.
stuck to say games like Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege and other live service games and free to play games? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, this free to play game model and what Fortnite's done and Warzone and all, that's a whole new episode, a whole different episode that we should talk about.
you
But I feel like, it's a mixed bag. One, time will tell, right? We are optimistic. I'm optimistic about the next Battlefield, but time will really tell how they do this one. But I do think that organizations are listening. I think they have an ear to the ground. Games like again Battlefield and CD Projekt Red games and all of these games, they listen, they improve. They're not just improving bugs; they're taking feedback from the gamers and they're like implementing it. They were really proud of the scale of the maps, right? They were really proud of the huge maps in which you can do so much. It's like an actual Battlefield, whatever. But they changed it. They reduced it to almost 30% of what it originally was, and now it's perfect. So they're not glued into, they're not being egoistic about the game that we've made and you have to play it. So right, there's some agility in their operating of these games after release. So I think it's definitely hopeful. And I mean, I really hope they don't mess up in the next game. I really hope that games stop releasing with so many bugs, because the writing's pretty much on the wall. Like games release with bugs, like games like Anthem, the huge anticipation and a huge dud because it was so buggy. It was like not a fun game to play. But like I was not expecting that out of Anthem and other games at all. But it still happened, and so people don't play it. They lose a lot of money. That in itself is a huge negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
But the part about time coming into it and like time will tell matters on, okay, they take this feedback, then what do they do with it? Right? They don't
yeah,
know a sure shot solution that will really appease all gamers or a majority of gamers. So they really have to anticipate a lot of things and then come out with something that is better and that people are happier with. Games like Helldivers, which are now releasing, which are so polished and like amazingly fun and still not repetitive. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful about the future about these organizations in this game development strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, some of these developers can also take the route of having the games in beta for like 10 years,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
Which a lot of games do, Daisy and Rust, and there are so many games out there that
Hades
use the
also.
community as testers. Sorry?
I said Hades also did that. Yeah.
Hades as
yeah,
well. And Hades turned out so well, right? I
Yeah.
mean, won a whole bunch of awards, brilliant game. But that's another way to go about it. Just have the game in beta, keep listening to feedback from the community, keep improving it, but then by not charging them full price.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so that also works for both sides, for the developers and for the
yeah.
gaming.
Yeah.
Battlefield was
So
in beta. They just didn't know that they were in beta.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Cyberpunk even in beta. Cyberpunk was for. I think that's where the problem is, right? Cyberpunk should not have released in the older generation console. That's where they try to be
Yeah,
over smart.
they
Yeah.
should have. Yeah, they were trying to like do a larger audience. They
Yeah.
should have just stuck with their okay. This is a new gen
And
game.
at
This
some
is where
point
it's
they
supposed
would
to
know,
play.
right? They would know ki this product is not good. Why is it going out? Also, when you
Yeah,
talked one more thing before we try to wrap it up, what you mentioned about Battlefield listening to the community, I saw them deleting posts on Reddit as well. When people used to complain about certain things in the initial time, there was so much negativity around the game that they used to delete the posts on Reddit as well. So they want to hear what they want
yeah.
to hear at the end of the day. That's what I
yeah,
mean.
That's where they started from. Okay, that's where they started from, and maybe I don't know. Like, of course, it's really childish to
Yeah.
like remove publicity, especially on the internet. You are not going to get away with this.
yeah,
Um,
But
but
yeah.
yeah, I don't know why. Like, who was in charge of that at that time?
yeah.
But yeah.
Who the community manager was back then. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah,
Overall, I think is it fair to say that to have a positive relationship with gamers, to foster a
Yeah.
nice relationship, I mean, they have to build trust. They have to listen to feedback, and they have to do more to see to research on what gamers actually value
yeah,
while spending the money and spending the time on playing a game,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
So and we do believe that the companies are doing that, right? We are going the right direction. We have examples of Battlefield, No Man's Sky, all these games where they are making a difference after getting
Yeah.
feedback. So
yeah,
overall, it does look good for the future.
Sure.
yeah.
It does. Yeah.
It does. Yeah, I was just like, as a closing question, I was thinking, would it be a feasible model if a game releases in beta for free, like Call of Duty does, Battlefield does, but just for a few weeks, right? They release the game and let everybody play it for the first 2 months, let's say, and then they come out with the full price game. I wonder if that's something that can sort of address, okay, I don't want to pay full price for this game, but I also don't want to release a game that's not polished. I don't know, there's some innovation in there. Like, basically, the question would be, what can companies do to sort of get the best of both worlds about all these things that we've talked about, right? Remasters, games releasing every year with incremental changes, and games releasing that are unfinished and buggy, right? What would be one scenario in which they could sort of capture all of these things and come out with a strategy that's a bit more conducive to a good game release?
I think what you suggested might not work. One major reason for that is the fact that 90 to 95% of the people aren't community who are interested in giving feedback. They'll see a free game,
Mm,
they'll play it, and
very
they'll have a
true.
bad experience, and then you have to spend lots of money of PR to just get them back to tell them, no, we were just trying to see, and now our game is okay. Please come back. So that's where the issue would be.
Yeah,
And that's where I
yeah.
think so. I think inbuilt only they have done it before. It's not like we are asking for much. We're just asking for a game that is bug free. If they are asking for so much money, that's what they should do. But yeah, to
Mm.
avoid this, I think I don't know. I don't know because I don't understand the reason of them doing this as well, and why other companies are not doing it. Is it a culture issue? Is it a crunch issue? Is it timeline?
It's also the scale of these games,
Yeah,
right? These games are huge, but I guess all games are
exactly.
really complex at this stage, so it's not a unique problem. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like, what can companies do to avoid it? Rohan, what do you think? Like, what can companies do? What can game studios do, learning from their mistakes and sort of taking into account to not do these three mistakes?
Yeah, I don't think I'd call them mistakes. Example, the annual releases, the remasters. I don't think they're really mistakes. Of course, releasing a
Mm.
game with bugs is unacceptable. And that I think there's different kinds of pressure, like Arjun was saying, it's a mix of pressure from different areas, sticking to timelines, keeping the investors happy. It's a big mix, right? But I think releasing DLCs, making remasters, charging $10 for $20, I think all of that is required for them to continue developing other games that we would want, right? Again, the scale of games, like you were mentioning, Pawan, is massive, and gamers are expecting more and more and more, right? Like I'm really concerned for Rockstar when they release GTA 6. The expectation is so
Yeah.
high for a game like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we also spoke about the working conditions of people building these games, right? Close to release time and for many
Mhm.
years. So in a way, I think they need to make money to give us good games.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if I should be saying that something like that. But I think the only thing that needs to be fixed is releasing unfinished games.
Mm.
I'm kind of okay with Last of Us being remastered one more time.
Yeah.
In the next year. I wouldn't buy it for sure.
Yeah.
But if there's a company that's willing to buy it, fine, they can buy it. I definitely wouldn't buy it.
Fair point.
But yeah, I think it's fine. We can choose if we want to buy it or not.
Of course.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we could say that we are missing out on newer games and newer experiences, but I think there's a ton of options out there, and we spoke about it in one of our previous episodes. We have multiple platforms now. We have easy access to games across multiple platforms. So I think there's no lack of enough games to play and to keep us occupied.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
I just
Yeah, no, I'm
yeah.
with you there. Mhm.
I feel, as my closing remarks would be, that I understand that some games are not coming out as perfect as they should be, and they should be given a window. But at the same time, it should not be celebrated. Their journey of reaching the bare minimum should not be celebrated and awarded as well. So I think that's where the issue is. Okay, oh, Battlefield did this. They're now perfect. Cyberpunk is perfect now. 10 on 10 by IGN. IGN even does re-reviews of certain games. Why are you doing re-reviews if they've already paid for it, right? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think community building and feedback and all of that is good. It's a good culture that is getting built, that companies are listening. But at the same time, a release date is a release date. Try to release a good game. If you're not able to do it, then own up to it. There's no story attached to it. That's what I feel.
But Arjun is like that Indian parent that will be like, oh, you got 85%. Of course you are going to get 85%. How dare you not get 100?
At this point, I'm just expecting 33% from games.
True.
Yeah.
Battlefield, we are looking at you. Let's go.
Yes, I think we've tried to close this like 7 times now. But
Yeah.
let us know what you guys think in the comments about this whole topic. Are you leaning towards the gamers, towards the gaming companies, or do we all just understand that it's kind of give and take? Let us know in the comments. We had fun making this episode. Hope you all have fun too.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Bye.
See you guys on the next one. Bye.